Hey everyone, James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today, as you can see, I have a slightly different setup. A few people have requested that I kind of show my lower table and just another way that I will sometimes prepare tea at home. Frankly, not that commonly, but when I have guests over or something like that, or I'm serving tea for just another person or maybe a handful of other people, sometimes I will switch to this table just because it's a little more spacious. My wife normally stores plants here, so they're all off, pushed to the side right now. But because I'm filming in Inbetweenisode, I am here on my own and going to explain to you kind of the basic setup. So usually for a while here, I was just using a good old-fashioned electric kettle right here, just plugged right into the outlet. But because we had moved here and my previous setup, I had a tetsubin and stuff like that I'd been using, and I had just frankly been too lazy to pull it out. But you know, it's a nice piece of teaware right here, and I will show you in a second how I do it. It's a nice piece of teaware, so I pulled it out a few months ago or a couple months ago, and I've used it a couple times, and it's just a nice way to brew tea. It does make slightly different water softer by a little bit, but I'll be working with fairly soft water here. It certainly does have some impact on it, and it's probably beneficial for some teas and maybe a little bit less so for others. But I just like using it as a teaware piece. So, which is the reason why I think a lot of people will use teaware. It's not necessarily all to make the tea maximize or optimize tea or anything like that. So the tea I am drinking today is a good old chunky cake, 450 grammer. This is a Xiaguan green mark cake from 2001. It's often used as a companion piece for the 8853. The storage of this is actually Shenzhen, which is just outside of Hong Kong, but it is dry Shenzhen, which I think is very notable, just because you can have quite a range of storage within Hong Kong as well as Shenzhen, or just in general. You can store tea just methodologically very different depending and just end up with very different results. And so the storage from this could not be more different from Hong Kong traditional storage. So yeah, I have made steep number 2 here, and this is just a nice cake that I picked up from a Weidian, which is kind of like a Taobao vendor, and split it a number of ways. And I know the reviews of this were mixed, but this is actually, I think, one that I like perhaps even more than the 1999 8653. Some people have not been huge fans of the storage, and I tend to agree. If you're looking for something that is drinkable now and kind of at the right place in order to drink, you could certainly select storage that is more aggressive than this, but I do find the dry storage to be quite interesting, just because I think in a lot of people's a lot of veteran tea drinkers that prefer aged tea, this tea would be considered not quite ready. And I agree, this tea will probably get better. I do find it drinkable now though. So here we go. Cheers. But you can see here, I have my just very basic hot plate I bought on Amazon years ago, a Waring hot plate, which I think was kind of one of the big brands at the time. I do believe this one may be out of stock or out of print or whatever. Just this tetsubin I got from Artistic Nippon probably almost a decade ago. I think not quite a decade ago, but close to. And just heat it up there. Fill up the pot here. You want to make sure you're not boiling the tetsubin dry. So I will have another kettle full of hottish water that I will use to sort of refill the tetsubin as I go, just so I'm not running to the kitchen. This room it's not far from the kitchen, but it's a couple rooms away. So just want to make sure that I can do it fairly fluidly. You don't want to be running around each time you have to reheat. So I'll usually make 1 or 2 steeps and then return it back to the tetsubin just to keep it hot. One thing I definitely do more than when I initially got into tea is probably reboil a little bit more consistently. I've not found reboiling to be beneficial, and I think the heat is extremely important, especially when you're brewing aged tea. So you can see this brew is a really nice orangish red. And the tea is just not fully smooth yet. It still has a lot of texture of resin Tastes very classically Xiaguan. I don't get a ton of smoke from this. I think perhaps a little bit of retired smoke is still in the taste. And for me, Chaguan is always like about getting that mixture of sweetness and robustness just kind of intermingled in the right proportions. And so for me, this tea, like a lot of the mid-2000s Chaguan teas that are not quite ready in the like super smooth sense, I do find it drinkable in that same way. Perhaps due to the dry storage, this is probably more akin to something like 2004 Jiaji, maybe only slightly more advanced than that from XT, maybe even less depending on the storage of that. Do I prefer a little bit more humidity in my storage? I think I do, but I do think this tea is an interesting place. I think there's nothing messed up about it. I think it probably just needs another 15 years in Shenzhen going along at that pace. Which I did not anticipate Seattle being any faster, by the way, to kind of get where it needs to go. So yeah, for me, a pretty enjoyable tea. And you can also just tell on some of these early Chaguans that the material is just much better quality. I compare it to the 2004 Jiaji more in just like age rather than material quality. I think the material here is much, much better. You know, it doesn't really remind me of 2005 Chaguan Iron Cake 8653 at all. It just doesn't have that kind of like menthol pine characteristic I identify with Chaguan a lot. But it does have a lot of woodiness, a good body, some oiliness to it. Still a bit bitter. Still getting a touch of sourness as well. So, yeah. Anyways, I am going to keep enjoying this tea. I'd be curious to hear about other setups that people will do, especially when they're hosting people for tea. I think hosting people for tea is a lot of fun, so I do enjoy doing it. So it's something I've been doing a lot more as the pandemic has waned. So I've had a lot of people over for tea at this point. But yeah, just I'd be curious if other people use a hot plate or induction or anything like that. It tends to be an area where some people will like to expand to. I think electric kettle is certainly the easiest and probably the most common way that people are brewing tea. But having something like this that you can have when you have a little extra time and want to spend a little bit more kind of meditative tea time, I think is really ideal. So not quite your grab and go, quick, let's brew some ripe up in the morning. It's more sit down, hang out, and enjoy some tea. So I am going to sit here for another while and keep drinking this tea and hopefully enjoying it. And not going to give the tea a rating here. I don't feel like I have properly brewed it out to really say that, but I will say that I think it's a decent tea, and I, in many ways, do prefer it over that 1999 Iron Cake 8653 from the same vendor that I brought on about half a year ago. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time.